Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week, we're doing something special because I actually have no idea what Mike has cooked up for us to learn about this week. So I'm just going to hand this one off to you, Mike, and let's get started.
I can see you're not in the Google Doc. You're not.
I am not in this Google Doc.
You have no idea what's going on. So today is a little nostalgia episode, and I'm not going to do any more suspense than that. We are talking about Star Wars games on the Nintendo 64. There are four of them. Yeah, there's four of them. Shadows of the Empire, Rogue Squadron, Episode 1 Racer, and Battle for Naboo. And we're going to go in chronological order. So the first game on our list is Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. I'm so amped for this, by the way. I don't know if that's coming across, but I love these games, and this was kind of like my childhood way of staying into Star Wars, so I'm going to be really real into this one.
Oh, that's great. I actually haven't played any of those. I did rent Episode 1 Racer for like a weekend, but I never played Shadows of the Empire. I never played Battle for Naboo or
Do you have your 64 still?
Yes, I do.
Well, you know what? Next time I come down there, I'm going to bring Shadows of the Empire and Episode 1 Racer, because those are the two I played the most. And yeah, it's really great. So we're going to start. Shadows of the Empire came out on December 3rd, 1996, and it was the first Star Wars game on the Nintendo 64. And here's a fun fact for you. There is actually a Windows 95 version that was released on September 17th, 1997. And then on May 3rd, 2016, as in just like 3 years ago, Good Old Games re-released it with a compatibility update for Windows 64-bit systems. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Most of these games I'm going to talk about, by the way, have Good Old Games counterparts. So that's pretty cool. I think it's really neat. So if I talk about these games, you're like, I really want to play this. Hey, guess what? You can if you got a PC, because it'll run on a toaster. These will all run on whatever, They're very old games. So, all right. Development on Shadows of the Empire started in 1994, and the idea really came from LucasArts realizing they kind of like wanted to make a game that was a side story to the movies. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, and they didn't want to use any film characters. They wanted to do a new one. So they chose Dash Rendar.
Oh, boy.
I love Dash Rendar.
That sounds like a good Star Wars name.
It is. That's what I at first noted there. It says Dash Rendar. An amazing name. Okay. It's the most Star Wars of Star Wars names. And if you're like, hey, he sounds kind of like Han Solo. Well, that's because he pretty much is Han Solo. He's a smuggler and an ace pilot, and his ship is called the Outrider, and it looks a lot like the Millennium Falcon. And here's a little fun tidbit about that. Dash Rendar was not in the most recent Disney canon, like until 2018, because you know how when Disney took over Star Wars, they kind of said we're throwing everything away and the movies are only canon. He showed up finally in 2018, like this old journal thing. But if you watch the 1997 special edition version of A New Hope, you can see the Outrider, his ship, leaving Mos Eisley right as Luke and the gang get there.
Oh,
it pulls up and leaves. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. I think that's pretty cool.
George Lucas going back and adding stuff into his movies.
Yeah, so I think Disney didn't even realize that he was actually already in the canon, because it was like that little weird scene where his ship's just leaving. So before that, though, like everything that had him in it was non-canon. So the whole story of Shadows of the Empire is it comes from a platform, I guess multiple media is how I would say it, because the story's told as a novel, a comic book, and a video game. So they're all three split between those. So if you want the full story, you got to get all of them.
So you got to read, you got to do all of them.
Yeah. So the story is an interquel, which I thought was a really cool word, between the film Star Wars Empire Strikes Back and then Return of the Jedi. So essentially what's going on, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but you play as Dash Rendar, and you're helping the Rebel Alliance, and craziness ensues. And I'm going to talk about a couple cool levels that I really liked at the end of this as I talk about it. So LucasArts actually used the same engine from the games Star Wars Dark Forces and Star Wars Outlaws. I haven't played those games. Have you played those, Tyler?
I played a little bit of Dark Forces because it was on Steam.
Oh, yeah. So that was like, that's how they built the 3D environments.
Dark Forces is like basically a Doom clone. Like it's kind of on par with a Doom. It came out probably not very long after Doom did.
You know what? Star Wars Doom. You have me into it. The engine, though, is called the Jedi engine. So that's pretty neat. It has a name. The game was programmed in the C programming language. And it was originally planned, it was supposed to have 19 levels. And then Nintendo Power reported that would have 12 levels. And then when the game finally came out, there were only 10 levels. So,
oh, yikes.
Yeah, the development, it was pretty crazy. So the reason it was so weird is the development came as a super secret, because this game pretty much launched like a couple months after the N64 launched. So LucasArts...
so it kind of got maybe skipped over in the hype, or caught up in the hype?
It was caught up in the hype, but the design-wise, everything was still a secret while they were designing it. So the people that were making the game didn't really know what was going on. They were told that the N64 would have as much power as a $140,000 at the time SGI Onyx supercomputer with the Reality 2 engine in it. So they kind of...
That was probably an embellishment.
Yeah, like something weird. Like that's what was written, and I was like, that seems excessive, but that's what they used to design the game. Okay. But SGI, Silicon Graphics, who made the N64 graphics, they made the CPU, right?
They made the graphics portion.
Graphics portion. Okay. They were not done yet. So it was like they were kind of making it on this computer and hoping it would work, and then they transferred over and they had to port it, and it was this whole thing. But the even weirder part of designing it is there was no controller for the N64 yet.
Oh, so they didn't know. They didn't know what they were going to be getting into.
They didn't know what they were getting into. So what Nintendo did, and this is the weirdest thing I've ever heard, is they sent them a modified SNES controller that had an analog stick and a Z trigger on it. Okay,
that sounds like a great controller.
It's kind of cool, right? But
yeah,
no one could see this controller that was walking by in the office that wasn't on the project. So they put it in a cardboard box, and you just put your hands in either side of the cardboard box and held the controller, but you couldn't actually see the controller. We had to go off. That's how they did it in the office. So it's just the way they went with it. And you're like, hey, why did LucasArts put up with this? That's what I thought immediately. And the reason was LucasArts really felt like they had missed out on video games by not like committing to a system, and they didn't want to do that again. So this was the first game in what would be 4 games that came out for Star Wars. And spoilers, after this game comes out, they sign a 3-game exclusivity deal with Nintendo, which is how we get the other 3 games. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, apparently also in the office of LucasArts, like they weren't allowed to like talk about it. Like you couldn't talk about what you were working on for Star Wars. Yeah, it was super secretive. Yeah, because not only is it like Nintendo's even more secretive, I feel like, than LucasArts is. So it was like double secret. But yeah, so this game is memorable to me. I'm talking about me here because of a couple cool levels. The first level is the Hoth level, where you're flying in like a snow speeder and you can like link and tow cable the AT-ATs. That's pretty awesome.
Oh yeah,
that blew my mind as a kid. And the other thing is Wampas. All right. Do you know what a Wampa is, Tyler? You know what a Wampa is, I'm sure.
You know what? This is embarrassing for me to say. I'm not sure I do know what a Wampa is.
A Wampa is the ice monster that Luke fights in the cave, and he has to force his...
Oh, that's right. That he climbs inside, right?
That's a Tauntaun.
Oh, Tauntaun.
So that's...
Oh, the Wampa is like the Yeti thing.
Yeah, the Yeti thing that he fights in the cave and cuts his arm off.
Yeah.
Okay. I love Wampas. If there's one thing you take from this podcast, it's that I'm a big fan of Wampas. Okay? And there's a level in the game where you're on a train and you go through these cliffs and then you end up fighting IG-88 in a junkyard, and that's a really cool boss fight. But before that, you get Cliff Wampas. These are genetically modified Wampas that lived on Ord Mantell, which is where the IG-88 fight is. And they the Empire makes them into sand. I called them sand wampas as a kid because I was a child. Apparently, they're supposed to be called cliff wampas. Full disclosure, I called them sand wampas until I researched this. I've been calling them that my whole life. But they are cliff wampas, apparently. And it's just like a really cool little piece of lore that was in this video game that you kind of like could look up later on and be like, oh, that's really cool. The Empire's so evil, they turned a monster even into a worse monster. So that's cool. And then the last level I remember, and this is full disclosure, the level I did not get past was the swoop gang level, where you're on a swoop, like one of those speeder bikes that looks kind of like a motorcycle, and you got to like fight them off and like run them into stuff while you keep going. And I just could never beat it, and my childhood attention span was waning, and then I didn't finish it. But apparently you go on to like save the princess too, because of course Princess Leia gets captured, and you got to save her from Prince Xizor. I think it's Xixor. Zizor. Yeah, but it's a pretty cool game, and it's like my favorite thing in the world, this game. Like, it was really like my because I watched A New Hope probably in 1992, okay, when I'm like 4 or 5. And then I didn't really have a lot of Star Wars stuff until the prequels came out. And this game was like a thing, you know, because it was right before the prequels came out.
It was like a thing to keep your Star Wars love going.
Yeah, so this game was great. And if one thing you take away from this podcast, it's that I love Wampas, and they're my favorite Star Wars animal. And also just fun to say, you know, Wampas. What a great thing to say. Yeah. So the game had a mixed reception from critics. It actually had like, the reviews were between like 6 to 8 out of 10. So like, I mean, that's mixed, but I think it was pretty like well made. And also I feel like sales wise, it was the third best selling game on the N64 in 1997, and it sold more than 1 million copies. So
okay, so it did pretty well.
Commercially it did well. Mixed reviews from critics. A lot of the critics were like, I don't think this third person thing kind of works for what they were going for. And I'm like, you know what, it's pretty amazing though. And then they're like, yeah, you know what, the Hoth scene is really amazing, and all like the spaceship fighting when you're in the Outrider is really amazing. And I'm like, yeah. And that's pretty much what spawned the next game, Rogue Squadron.
Oh yeah.
So play Shadows of the Empire if you're a Star Wars fan. That's the game for you. But Rogue Squadron is probably the most popular Star Wars game for the N64, I think, you know, just looking back on it.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, this game takes place during the time between A New Hope and An Empire Strikes Back, and you are Luke Skywalker, and you're flying your X-Wing, and it feels really good. The game has 16 levels, and unlike the previous games where you would fly an X-Wing and it was like a space simulator kind of, because I think there was a game called Star Wars X-Wing for PC, and it was very like
TIE Fighter.
Yeah, and it was very like flight simulatory kind of.
Yep.
Like this one is very much like arcade style, you know, like you're on a rail, you're flying, you're on a rail, like you can fly through a canyon, but you can only go one direction, you know. And this game would not have existed if not for the Outrider and Hoth battles in Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. Rogue Squadron and LucasArts production manager Brett Tosti even said that, quote, the whole scene was actually the genesis for Rogue Squadron, because everybody said, why don't you do a whole game like that? So we did. Regarding, of course, to the Hoth scene. He's like, oh yeah, we should just make a whole game that's like the Hoth battle in Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. And that's what they did. LucasArts signed a 3-year exclusivity deal with Nintendo after the great success of Shadows of the Empire. And Factor 5 is the company, the studio that made the game with them. They co-developed it. And Factor 5 was actually working on another game called Rescue on Fractalus! Exclamation point. So I guess it's Rescue on Fractalus! Like really loud, apparently.
You have to shout it.
Yeah, you have to shout it really loud. But once... That's a sequel to a 1984 game of the same name, by the way, and it's also space combat. Like, it's straight up kind of like... looks exactly like Star Wars, but it's not Star Wars. So LucasArts just pulled them from that game and was like, just changed it into Rogue Squadron. Because Factor 5 was a subset of LucasArts. So that game, the Rescue on Fractalus, would have been a LucasArts game anyway. And they're like, Star Wars sells. Just make it Star Wars instead. There's also a Rogue Squadron comic book. And that's what the story was pretty much taken from for Star Wars Rogue Squadron. I've never read it, though. Did you read a lot of... because I know you're a Star Wars fan. Did you read a lot of like the Star Wars books and comics and stuff?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit.
Me neither. I just watched the movies, and then I would like hear random stuff. Like, and I would occasionally browse a Star Wars encyclopedia. Remember those cool books that you'd see at Scholastic book fairs? Oh, the Scholastic book fair.
Probably the extent of my expanded universe knowledge came from Jedi Outcast.
Oh, yeah.
Which is an awesome game.
Yeah, the games are so good. There's so many Star Wars games for PC. And you can usually, on May 4th, doesn't Humble Bundle like every year do a crazy bundle with all the Star Wars games? Yeah, they do a big old sale. Yeah, so you can get all those. Factor 5 developed Rogue Squadron using the, at the time, unreleased memory expansion pack. Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, dude.
So they begged Nintendo. They're like, please, please, please release that expansion pack commercially so we can use it. And Nintendo was like, no, we're not going to let you do it. For just one game? No way. And then another studio called Iguana Entertainment also used the expansion pack for their game, a little game called Turok 2 Seeds of Evil. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, and then in the end, Nintendo caved and was like, fine, we'll release this with both of your games. So if you play Rogue Squadron without the expansion pack, it will still play. It will just be in 320 by 240 resolution. If you put in the expansion pack, it bumps it up to 640 by 480.
Oh, that's a good bump.
Yeah, a really good bump. So I think it's pretty much better with the expansion pack. I think my friend gave me an expansion pack. I probably said this already before. And it's just been in my N64. I never bought a game or bought an expansion pack. Like bought a game with an expansion pack or just bought the expansion pack. I just got an extra one from a friend because he had Donkey Kong and he got another game that had it and he just gave it to me. It's pretty rad. So
yeah, I got mine from Donkey Kong, but I think Majora's Mask also came with it. Any game that required it came with it.
Yeah, maybe Perfect Dark required it. Now that I think about it.
It required it for a few game modes. Like, you definitely weren't getting the whole game if you didn't have the expansion pack, but I don't think it technically required it. Like, you could play through the single player.
Oh, I'd probably like to do all the simulation stuff. You had to have the expansion pack because they were
and if you want, I think it was the 2-player, like, the versus mode, the co-op versus mode.
Oh.
Because there was a mode in that game where you could play through the campaign where one of you was Joanna Dark, and the other one, like, played random bad guys to try to stop them from getting through, and I think you needed the expansion pack to do that mode. I could be wrong. That's off the top of my head.
Dude, that's a really cool game mode, though.
Yeah.
I like that. Good pull, Tyler. Impressive. So, Star Wars Rogue Squadron. When the game was shown at E3, and this is in May of 1998, they had, like, no AI, and they only had a couple of the models fully rendered. So when Brett Tosti, remember him from the quote from before, when he did the tech demo for that at E3, he had to fly on a particular path and make it look like he was fighting enemies that were trying to shoot him down. Like, he essentially lied and was just like, oh, look, they're coming at me. This is crazy. And then gamers totally bought it, though. They were just like, and the hype machine began for Rogue Squadron. No one had any idea. Like, he did a great job acting and making it look like the TIE fighters were actually trying to shoot him. So good for you. Brett Tosti.
Nicely done.
Nicely done. To promote the release of the game, National Treasure Mark Hamill, a.k.a. Luke Skywalker, actually went to the Mattel Children's Hospital in Los Angeles and played the game with patients in a Starlight Children's Foundation Fun Center. So isn't that cool?
That is cool. Nice. Good guy, Mark Hamill.
I love Mark Hamill. He's the best. So the game was then released. Rogue Squadron came out on December 3rd, 1998, and sold like gangbusters. Okay.
Like hotcakes?
Like hotcakes, like gangbusters, bananas even, I would say. And it was only beaten in the month of December by this really like little known game called The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. It's the only game.
Oh yeah, that's a little known. Not too many people heard of that one.
Kind of a cult classic, that game. So
yeah, that one's digging in the archives a bit.
Definitely a deep pull. So the game was reviewed and it had a 7 to 9 range by news outlets, so it did better than Shadows of the Empire. But the main gripe about Rogue Squadron is there's no multiplayer. Isn't that weird?
Oh yeah, that is weird.
There's no multiplayer in it, and I guess it's understandable, but they'll fix that later on. I mean, Rogue Squadron 2, which came out for the GameCube, definitely had multiplayer in it. So the other cool thing though about this game is there were some really, really cool secrets. So if you got all of the bronze, silver, or gold medals, you would then get the levels Beggar's Canyon, Death Star Trench Run, and Battle of Hoth, respectively. So the gold one got you Battle of Hoth. And then also, the Millennium Falcon, the TIE Interceptor, and the T-16 are unlockables as well. And the AT-ST is even unlockable as like a special level to play. Because the AT-ST is like the Chicken Walker one, So, yeah, it's really cool. There's also even this fun Easter egg unlockable. And the sound designer, Rudolf Stember, his 1969 Buick Electra 225 is a playable craft in the game called the V-Wing. Look up a video, just type in 1969 Buick Star Wars Rogue Squadron, and you'll see a really funny video of the guy picking it, and you're just literally like flying a car around, kind of like an early Harry Potter nod, if you will. Okay.
The Buick is a recurring Easter egg throughout every game in the Rogue Squadron series. So I'm just reading the Star Wars wiki.
It comes back definitely, and it will come back again in this episode as well. So get ready for it. Probably one of my favorite Easter eggs, I think, after reading this. It was so great.
That's great.
This game is really great. If you love Star Wars, like X-Wings and space fighting, or even like, I would say even like flight games, it kind of had an Ace Combat feel before Ace Combat.
Yeah, I always looked at it and thought, man, is that like Star Fox but Star Wars? but I never played it.
Oh, yeah, it totally is, essentially. It's a great game, and I never owned it, but I had a friend that owned it, and we would like sit down and switch off like kids do for hours at a time playing this game. So, okay. Now, to the entire reason I did this series. This is the game. I was going to do an episode on just this game, and then I was like, it might not be meaty enough, okay? So I decided to do just to add these 3 other games to it, which is good, too, because these other games, I think you can agree, like Rogue Squadron, Shadows of the Empire, and Battle for Naboo are all good games, okay?
Yeah,
but Star Wars Episode 1 Racer is the game that I played the most on N64, possibly. I was obsessed with this game.
Like out of all the games on N64?
Yeah, like honestly.
Wow.
Like I think I spent so much time, because this game I got it, and there's a tournament mode where you can just keep unlocking stuff for your craft and unlocking more pod racers and characters and levels. And I played this game a ton. You know what? Maybe Smash. Smash might have been the one I played the most. But this game, I played it so much just because Smash had multiplayer. This game I didn't really play a lot of multiplayer with. This is the second game of the 3 in that LucasArts exclusivity deal with Nintendo. And the game came out on May 18th, 1999 for the Nintendo 64, but it also had a Windows, Game Boy Color, Mac, and a Dreamcast version that came out.
A Dreamcast version?
Yeah.
That must be, like, that's got to be the best version, right?
I don't know. I didn't look up anything about the Dreamcast version because I'm all up in Nintendo 64's business right now. So, the development.
But no PlayStation version. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because it was a Nintendo exclusive for a while, and I think somehow Dreamcast got it. Because Dreamcast came after N64, right? Or was it the same generation?
Well, the Dreamcast was like in a weird kind of in-between generation. It came out in 99, so that would have been 3 years after the N64. But it came out like 2 years before or like a year before the PlayStation 2. So it's kind of in between these. But it looks like it came out about 4 or 5 months later on the Dreamcast.
Yeah.
After it came out on 64.
Okay. Good look up. Okay.
Oh, wait. No, sorry. I was looking at something different. That's after it came out on Macintosh. It came out on 64 in May. So, yeah, it was almost a year later.
Almost a year. That's like a year exclusivity. That's common.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
All right. So the development for Episode 1 Racer took 2 years long, and it spanned from 1997 to 1999, and the entire game was made in-house at LucasArts, as in there was no outside studio. Factor 5 did not jump in. They were working on another game, which I will tell you about in a moment. So the development team that worked on Shadows of the Empire came in to help. So Brett Totste's back, okay? And their goal was to create, quote, it was to feel like an eyeball-peeling racing game where you're going so fast, you're just nervous, end quote. And I think they nailed it. Like, this game, you feel like you're going so fast. Like, it feels like you're pod racing. You're moving so quick. Just like, you know, when in the movies, they even say, like, you need really fast reflexes because you go so fast.
Yeah.
It, like, feels like that.
Yeah, because Anakin's the only human who can do it because his reflexes are so good or something like that, huh?
Because of the since removed midichlorians thing. Correct?
Right.
Yeah, so those aren't a part of canon either. But what really stood out to me... I'm jumping ahead here. The game was originally called Star Wars Pod Racer, but then another company trademarked Pod Racer, so they had to change it to Episode 1 Racer. Isn't that weird? It was either they trademarked Pod Racer or they just trademarked pod, like using the word pod in video games. And they were so nervous about getting sued, they just changed it to Episode 1 Racer. And
wow, Star Wars was nervous about getting sued? You think they'd have the resources to crush that?
I know, right? This is LucasArts times, though, too. I guess, well, they had tons of money, though, huh? They had Skywalker
I'm sure
Sound.
they had tons of money.
Yeah, they were making hand over fist money. Gangbusters. Okay. What stands out to me the most about this game, though, is the level variety. So I was researching it, and there are various locations in this game that had never been included in any Star Wars video game before that. Like, they had your standard Tatooine, but they also had levels that, like, were memorable to me. Like, one of them specifically, there's one of the final tracks you unlock. It's called Inferno, and it's on the planet Barunda, and it took place inside an active volcano. It was really cool. So you'd have to, like, dodge lava and rocks falling. Yeah, it was nuts. The game is super fun. There's 3 game modes. There's tournament mode, and that's the one I always played that I talked about before, where you raced for credits, and then you could use the credits to buy new tracks or racers or parts for your pod racers that you already had. You could even buy those little repair droids, those cute little guys with like the frisbee heads. So adorable. Yeah. And then you could get a free play mode, and that is exactly how it sounds, where you're just driving it around. And then there was a time trial mode as well. I don't think the time trial mode actually awarded you with anything, so I really just played the tournament mode, because the tournament mode was really addicting. Like, you would just unlock more courses, and you'd unlock more pod racers, and then you'd upgrade the ones you had, and you'd pick like a favorite. There was also, for the N64 version of the game, 2-player split screen, which didn't come on all versions of the game. So the N64 had it, though, so that's important to mention. The reception around the N64 version was between a 7 and 9 out of 10. That's what I found, kind of like that range. So, good game. Yeah, a good game.
Yeah. People liked it.
The fun fact I found, though, was as of 2011, the game has a Guinness Book of World Records record as the best-selling sci-fi racing game, because it worldwide sold 3.12 million copies.
Wow.
That was 2011, though. I'm trying to think of other sci-fi racing games that have come out since 2011.
Sci-fi racing games. What?
The only one I could think of was F-Zero.
Yeah, that's a sci-fi racing game. I mean, but is something like Blur count? Blur was like a sci-fi racing game, right?
Maybe.
I mean, I'm sure it didn't sell as well as a Star Wars game, so it's not. I'm just trying to think of I can't even think of any sci-fi racers.
Not really, right? Yeah, and plus, because 3.12 million copies now is not a lot of copies, So if a new one came out, like, it would easily break this record. Just throwing it out there to you, Disney, if you want to make my dream come true and have this game be remade. The budget of the game was around $10 million. So it was definitely a success. If they sold 3.12 million copies at $60 a copy, they're doing well. Okay. It is a quintessential part of my childhood, is how I would describe it. And it's the entire reason we're doing this episode. And I love this game so much, and it's so fun, and I want everyone to play it so they can see if they love it too. And I've been traveling all this weekend, full disclosure. I've been gone. I've been in Spokane doing comedy shows, but I plan to break out my 64 tomorrow and play this game. So really excited about it.
That is very exciting.
I hope my saves are still there, because I don't know if this is one of those games that's saved onto the cartridge or if it's saved onto a memory card. If it's saved onto a memory card, I definitely will have no progress whatsoever. So,
that's a good question. Not very many games saved only to memory cards.
Yeah, I know that, like,
some did, though.
The games that I really loved, like Perfect Dark, definitely saved onto the cartridge, which I really liked, and then and my save file still works there, I think. But it was really fun. If you want to play this game, by the way, and you don't have an N64, do not worry, because in 2018, Good Old Games came out with a DRM free port.
Good old games.
Yeah, so you can just play the game all you want, DRM free, enjoy it, and then
that's
email
the best
us.
part of Good Old Games, is just never having to worry about the copy protection stuff. It's just like, it will work. It doesn't have any copy protection.
Yeah, it's so great. I'm a big fan of it. So if you play this game and you like it as much as you think I do, then email me at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. So we've come to the final game in our series about Star Wars N64 games. And this is, of course, the third and final exclusive that came out with LucasArts' Nintendo exclusivity deal, and it was Star Wars Episode 1, Battle for Naboo. And this came out on the N64 on December 18th, 2000, and because if there's one thing LucasArts loves, it's a holiday rush. Okay, they're really into selling on the holidays. Like, they sold Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. Did I say Rogue Squadron came out then too, right? I'm pretty sure it did.
I think so.
It was just it was only the racer game that didn't come out on the holidays, because that came out in May. So I don't know why they did it that way. That's really strange. Yeah. But so Battle for Naboo, once again, this was co-developed by LucasArts and Factor 5, who made Rogue Squadron. They're back together again. And in the game, you play as Gavin Sykes, and he is a lieutenant in the Naboo Royal Security Force. So it's like pretty much all the action takes place on Naboo or in the space above Naboo. And as you fight the Trade Federation, you'll essentially like follow the events of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, from a different perspective. And there are
that's cool.
Yeah, there are 15 levels, and the game is very much an arcadey style shooter. It's just like Rogue Squadron. The big difference is you fight on land, sea, and air. You are the Navy SEALs of Star Wars, now that I think about it. Yeah, I didn't even realize that. That totally works. So the cool story about this game, though, is they actually made a brand new engine for it solely for the land and water battles they added. So they had to make a new engine. The new engine was made by Factor 5, and it was made not only to support the land and water battles, but I don't think I mentioned it about Rogue Squadron. Rogue Squadron had really bad draw distance. Like, there was a fog of war that was really... You just
couldn't see very far ahead of you?
Yeah, that was like really close to you, and so enemies would like pop out of it, and that was another complaint about the game. So they wanted to... Factor 5 was like, this is not going to happen again. And they actually had a game they were making at the same time as they were making Battle for Naboo called Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. And that game actually had better draw distance technology, but it also had weather. So they were able to use that to add snow and rain to Battle for Naboo. So they co-developed them at the same time. The partnership with LucasArts worked LucasArts worked on the art and the level design, and Factor 5 did the new engine, the programming, the tools, and the sound. And then both of them kind of came together to help with the cutscenes and the post-production art stuff. So essentially, from what I understand, Factor 5 were like the N64 programming experts, and then LucasArts had everything to do on the Star Wars-y front of things, because they are LucasArts.
Factor 5 did a lot of stuff with these games. Like, I'm not going to pretend to know exactly technically how this worked, but like the way that they did things like increase the draw distance, they like modified specific parts of the microcode on the processor that normally most developers would never touch. They like get the microcode from Nintendo and they just use that one. But Factor 5 did their own, and that's what gave them the ability to do all these like cool things. And it's one of the reasons these games are very hard to emulate if you're trying to play them on your computer on an N64 emulator. The Factor 5 games are the ones that are like very difficult. I'm not sure what the state of them is now, but they're very difficult because of all the like weird tricks they used to get everything out of the N64.
Oh, that's really cool that they did that, though. I mean, I bet you they didn't even think about it at the time that people were going to try to emulate these.
Yeah, and I'm sure they weren't making games with the thought of like, well, this will be hard to emulate in the future.
Yeah, that was just an added bonus for them, I suppose. But
yeah,
this game, just like Rogue Squadron, by the way, had some really awesome secrets. Okay, there were 3 bonus levels. There was the Trade Federation secrets, the Coruscant attack. Is it Coruscant or Coruscant?
Coruscant.
That's what I've always said too. Okay, Coruscant encounter and Dark Side, and those unlock just like in the old game with bronze, silver, or gold medals, respectively. You can also use a password if you want to. So if you're like, I just want to play this level and I'm too lazy to unlock stuff, I'm just gonna type in this password. They also had unlockable vehicles. Those were the Sith Infiltrator, a Swamp Speeder, and an AAT. I don't really know what an AAT is. Do you know?
Nope, I have no idea.
I wonder if it's, because I don't think it's an AT-AT. I think it's like, maybe it's one of those Trade Federation tank things. Maybe that's what it is. There also were password or medal unlocks to get those ships. But the best one of all, well, actually, they had a TIE Fighter, too. That's important to note. And that was password only. Cool. But the best one of all, and I think you know where I'm going, is they have this brand new ship that's a 1969 Buick Electra 225. And once again, we had the revenge of Rudolph Stember, the sound designer, coming in and putting his Buick in the game. I love this so much.
That's so great. I never knew about that. That is awesome.
That is such an awesome thing to do. And the other cool unlock in this game, too, that made it kind of set apart from Rogue Squadron, is the development team. And this might be the first time it was ever done. Like, I read some stuff that said this was the first time it was ever done, but I wasn't entirely sure. So it may be the first time this was ever done. If you typed in certain passcodes, you could get design sketches and audio commentary for each level. They did like 5 minutes of
audio commentary on an N64 game?
Yeah, audio commentary.
Wow.
And so they said that each audio commentary was about 5 minutes. So you got over an hour of audio commentary on this game that you can just get.
That's crazy. That must have taken up so much cartridge space for what was like a bonus feature that not many people were going to figure out.
Right? It was pretty bananas, if you ask me.
Wow.
Yeah. So another thing to note about the game too is reception-wise, it had pretty good reviews. Like, I think 6.86 was the lowest, and then the highest I saw was a 9 out of 10. But now we're in the area of Metacritic, so it has an 84% on Metacritic out of 9 reviews. So it was a good game. I couldn't find sales statistics for this game, but I feel like overall that's probably the least important statistic about this. But Yeah, it was a really good game, and it's pretty much just kind of improved upon Rogue Squadron, but in the setting of Episode 1. Because, if there's one thing they love to do, it's make a game tied to a movie, and usually they're not that good, and it came out good this time, so that's cool. I never played this game much, like myself, but I did rent it, because, Blockbuster was a thing when we were kids.
Because everybody rented games back in the day.
Yeah, so I remember renting this game and playing it, and I don't know if I beat it or not, but it's still really, really fun. Gosh, I miss video game rentals. I know GameFly is a thing, but there was something about going to a store and picking it out.
Yeah, the Gaming Historian has a really good video on Nintendo versus Blockbuster that talks all about video game rentals, and it's very good to watch.
Oh, yeah, I should watch that after this. So, if there's going to be a recap of this episode, I think the two main things to take away from it are Wampas are dope, okay, and that they should remake Episode 1 Racer.
Yes, they absolutely should.
Those are my two things. So now, Tyler, after all of that, what you been playing?
Dude, I am full on 100% on board the Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers campaign train right now, playing through that storyline, and it is probably the best Final Fantasy story for a long time that has been told in a long time, and I'm totally on board and really digging into it right now.
Nice, man.
Yeah. I've been playing all the old content is really fun. Playing the new stuff as I unlock it is really fun. The changes they made to the different classes is really fun. I've been playing a lot of Red Mage, which is do a bunch of damage from a distance and then jump in and do a bunch of sword cool dance things and then jump back out and keep doing damage from distance. It's really fun. I've been having a blast.
Nice, dude. That makes me happy. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself. It's good to get back into an old game again. Has updates to it. It feels good. Like when I came back to Destiny after Rise of Iron, I jumped into that later, and it just felt super fun. That was Destiny 1. Yeah. And I remember that feeling of being like, oh, we're back. Here we go.
Yep. That's exactly how I was like, oh, yeah, here we go again, only in a good way.
I love it. I've been playing, not a lot because I've been gone. I've been playing Destiny. I've been trying to do that comp grind, and it's really frustrating. So I kind of backed away from that. But I play a lot of Apex with buddies, as always. And then I Game with Gold on Xbox has the game Inside by Playdead. They made
I've been
Limbo.
meaning to play that.
It's free right now on Xbox Live. And I played about an hour and 10 minutes of it, and I'm already almost halfway through the game. It's very short. It's 3 hours long, but it's so fun, and it's just intuitive. It's so it's a puzzle platformer, and you can grab stuff, and then you can jump, and that's it. And you solve it just feels really good, and it's a very dark story. Clearly, it gets you're like a kid in this world where I haven't beaten it yet, but my guess is aliens have taken over and are mind controlling people. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, sounds crazy.
Yeah, but it's really fun, and it just looks really cool. I'm excited to report. I'm going to beat it this week for sure, so I should be able to report back on it next week. But I'm having so much fun with it, and I was actually really sad to leave my Xbox and go do these shows in Spokane. I know how sad that sounds, but I was just like, should I bring my Xbox with me? And I'm like, nah, you don't want to be that guy. So it's I left it here. But it's really cool. So Inside, if you have an Xbox, it's free on Games with Gold, and if you have a computer, you can just buy it on there for cheap, I'm sure. It's a very short game, and it's just really well done. And I've never played Limbo, and I heard Limbo is really good.
I've never played Limbo either. That's one that's been on my list.
Yeah, but it's a great game, and everyone should check it out. Now, we got a couple new reviews, and then I got an email. What should I do first, the review or the email, you think?
Do you want
to
do the reviews first?
The reviews first. Okay, I'll do the reviews first. I have them right here. So the first one was on Monday, and it's from CPY Rue, I think is how you say it. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I recently came across this podcast and I'm absolutely loving it. As an avid gamer / collector, the podcast does a great job breaking down the history in an entertaining way. Would recommend it not just to gamers, but those interested in business and technology. Great listen. Excited to hear more. Hey, you know what? CPY Rue? Thank you. You're great. You're the best. Never change.
Thank you.
Thank you for the good review. That was very nice of you.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Sweeney JC says 5 stars. Very informative and hilarious. You two actually got me back into video games. I've wanted something to do after work some days, and I finally took the dive back into games. I went from ain't got no games to having 2 Breath of the Wild and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. Those are 2 great choices.
Oh, those are great choices, too.
Yeah. I got 2 games. Isn't nearly as catchy as the original phrase, though, but I'll keep working on it. Keep it up, Codex. You're great. I got
Nintendo
2
Switch
games.
got 2 games.
That's great. Thank you, Sweeney JC, and thank you, CPYRU. I think it's CPYRU. You know, I think that's how you're supposed to say it. If I said it wrong, you could email me at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. Speaking of emails, we got a great email from Harold in Brazil. What?
Oh, man. We got Matt in Japan. We got Harold in Brazil.
Yeah, we're international. We should change the name to Codex International. You know,
yeah.
Like we're a cool spy agency. All right. And Harold found the podcast on Spotify, and he wanted to find a podcast about Nintendo DS in English because he's using our podcast to help improve his English skills.
That's great.
He has to take the IELTS test, and he's using our podcast to help teach him. Thank you so much, Harold, and best of luck on your test. And thank you for listening. And I told him if he ever wanted to send us a game idea for a history to please do. I'm really looking forward to that. So
yeah,
that's awesome. So really great stuff this week. Thanks a lot for all those reviews and ratings and emails. And as always, you can just tell your friends about the podcast too. That means the world to us, obviously. And I think with that, we're done for the week. And we're going to Final Fantasy again next week, right?
Yeah, I think so. We'll bring it back.
All right, we're bringing it back to a chocobo named Desire. So until next time, thanks so much for listening, and goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.